Hi, Joe Cerrone, Basic AutoCAD. Today we're going to take a look at Chapter 7, Object Snap and Object Snap Tracking. We're going to take a look at accuracy within CAD drawings. We'll take a look at object snap modes. We'll be able to recognize snap markers and symbols. We'll look at snap settings for angles. We'll look at running object snaps. And we'll look at how to toggle object snaps on and off. And we'll also look at object snap tracking. And so I've got AutoCAD started here. I just have a default template, okay? If you watched the last lecture, if I say new and I just chose an AutoCAD template, it's just blank, vanilla, out of the box template. You could also use a mechanical or an architectural title block, and those are preferred as we go into some of the drawings. But for the lecture, I thought I would just leave it plain AutoCAD. So when we're looking at these snap settings, the AutoCAD snap settings, if we have the toolbar on, remember you can turn on the toolbar here. I'm going to hide the menu bar, and then you hit this little triangle with the line over it, show menu bar, and then if we went to Tools, Drafting Settings, we have our snap and grid, and then here's our object snap settings. And when object snap is enabled, when we draw a line near an endpoint, we'll get a square, and it'll gravitate. It'll be like a magnet. It'll try to grab the endpoint, or it'll grab the midpoint or the center point. And so whatever's checked off will gravitate to that command while you're in a draw command. It doesn't just do it automatically. You need to be in a draw command. So if we look at the textbook over here and we have our object snap on, and I'm just going to go and turn on my snap settings here, and I'm going to say OK to that. The way that I like to have these set up is I like to have snap and grid on, polar tracking enabled at 15 degrees, OSNAP on, and object snap tracking on as well. And you'll see how that works. And so I'm going to hit OK. And then down here at the bottom of the screen, let's get rid of that. If you have your snap and grid enabled, here's our grid and snap. And then we can just enable all of these at this point. I'm going to turn off my grid. And then when I go through and I draw something like they have in the textbook, you'll see it's tracking with that green line. That's called polar tracking. And then if I just go through here, kind of swipe for object snap tracking, it's very useful. And then I come back over here. I can create this geometry. And you can see it gives me a glyph for an endpoint whenever I'm near an endpoint in that draw command. And then if I wanted to draw a line from the midpoint, I could say line. And then if I hold the shift key and right mouse click, shift right mouse, you can then select your OSNAP. And so if I say line, shift right mouse click, midpoint, when I touch this line, it will give me the midpoint of that line. If I have circles, arcs, and I wanted to draw a line, shift right mouse click from the center of a circle to an endpoint, I can do that. And it's much more accurate. If I zoom in, this is perfect from one endpoint to the other endpoint. And that's the thing. If we're working with CAD, what they want you to look at is the accuracy. And so if I don't have any snap and grid and I just draw a line, it's going to be that distance, 6.2155, which is very accurate. But if I just want a 6-inch line, then I'm better off to either go with line and polar, track that out, type 6, enter, and and now it's exactly 6 inches to 4 decimal places. Or I could put on my grid and my snap, and this is the best for beginners, and then I can just kind of count out the units until I get to 6 inches. Because you don't want 6.0 something. It's very precise, and the machines that we use in digital manufacturing today can make it to that tolerance level, but it costs more. And so as we work with these different object snaps, you can kind of see how it will go and gravitate to different O snaps, centers, midpoints, nearest. I like the nearest O snap a lot if I'm putting in dimensions. So for example, if I'm putting in if I go under annotate and I'm putting in a multi-leader, I'll oftentimes go shift right mouse click nearest so that the arrowhead touches the geometry. And so it's very precise for us to be able to work with object snaps and draw commands. And again, you know, showing you how to work from an endpoint and making lines tangent and being able to make lines parallel. And so if we had a couple of circles, we can erase this. And I wanted to draw a line tangent and tangent. What I could do is I could make sure that I have tangency enabled. And sometimes you want to turn off these other ones. I'm going to leave them on at this point. And then I'll go into a line command, and then as I hover, I'm not getting the one that I want. And this is very common. And the snap is also getting in the way. So I'll turn off the snap, and then as I work with these, it's again cycling through the center. But if I hold shift right mouse click, I can then force the tangency object snap, and then I can shift right mouse click, tangent, hit escape, right click, repeat the line command, shift right mouse click, tangent. Another way that I could do it would be to go into my object snap settings and then just turn everything else off. And just leave tangent on. And that way it'll only have one choice. We're going to put these back on. I typically run with endpoint, midpoint, center, intersection, extension, tangent, apparent intersection, and OK that. And so they go through and they show a number of different ways to use these different O snaps. For right now, what we want to do is we just want to have accurate geometry so that everything is endpoint to endpoint, so that when I work with commands like trim, I can go through and I can trim that, and it'll trim it to those endpoints of those lines. All right. And so it goes through a number of other O snap settings, things like being able to O snap between a door and being able to snap between these different modes and these different components. Here's an example of right mouse clicking so that you can choose the most appropriate object snap. And then here's our running object snap modes, which we demonstrated. Again, you can use the O snap glyph down here at the bottom here as a shortcut, another way to do the same thing. And then it talks about all these different object snap settings and the sizes of those O snaps. And so this is actually within the settings of the O snap. And so if we go here, object snap settings, and then we can kind of go through and be able to set up those different options. And actually, I think this is something that's in the options, which I'll cover at a different point. Object snap tracking we went through at the beginning. If you looked at your drafting settings, that's a good thing to have on, object snap tracking. because as I drew in the beginning of this video, this shape, I was able to track. And so if I wanted to draw a rectangle next to it, I could track over so that it's even, go up, acquire by hovering, and then if I have it in the right orientation, I can then go through and then track. And it works much more efficiently. And so that's an example of object snap tracking. There are some tips and tricks as we get farther along into working with OSNAPs, like apparent intersections and things. But for now, we're just going to work with the basic OSNAP settings. That completes our video lecture for Chapter 7, Object Snap and Object Snap Tracking.